I'm having a big time today. So we have to sit with somebody and develop a really great old, like those ones that I read. That didn't come out of my mind. Yesterday I was talking about growth and improvement and change and all of that. I got help with that. I got somebody that loved me sitting down. What about this? What about this? So yeah, but those ideas will. It's a journey. It's like me sitting down with Jim and realizing in my pride and arrogance that one of the things that was more important to me than a better relationship with God, this idea of worshiping how good I am with the steps came into play, which is just embarrassing. And I know you won't tell anybody. Don't say anything to anybody. Okay, where were we? Thank you. I love you, Gary. Are we at? Sorry, I forgot where you said we were on the clock. 50. 50. Okay. We got to get. We're going to take a break and then come back in 5 minutes, and I want to talk to you about my experience with Step 9, and then we're going to say the Lord's Prayer and have some laughs. Okay. 5 minutes. Okay. We got maybe 45 or 50 minutes here, and there'll be time for some questions afterwards. And what is wonderful is that the questions are coming up, that you're open. And I want to tell you before I go any further that I've really loved being here with you this weekend. I've loved it. I've loved the feeling of good AA in this community. I've loved the sense of working together and starting something important just by a little workshop like this in this community. I want to thank you very much. I want to thank everybody that's had anything to do with this at all, with this, whether you've been making coffee or fixed a meal or had set up the chairs, whatever piece of service you brought to it has made a big difference for all of us. And I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful to that, to you for welcoming us and providing for us this weekend, for nourishing us with your faith and with your hard work that you've brought to it, and for this rejoicing that we're together. And for the guys that are just starting this path, for the men and women that may be just starting this path, I would certainly invite you aboard. A guy named Schumacher, who was an Episcopal priest and a big friend of AA in the early days, is quoted in the book called Alcoholics Anonymous Comes of Age. And he says that many of us are like people standing around a railroad station talking about taking a trip. Like me for a long time in AA. And the more I'm in the railroad station and the more I see the trains come in and out and see the baggage and watch the people all dressed to travel and smell the smells and hear the sound, I get this odd notion that I'm on the move someplace. But he says it isn't until we get on the train that we get pulled out of the station. And he says, and we do get pulled out, we don't walk out. And I found that when I finally got on the train, I got pulled out of the station. I didn't. And a lot of my questions before that were, well, how could I do this? How would I have the power to do that? How would I can't possibly do that. I couldn't do that. And then I get on the train and I get pulled out of the station. And it's like, okay, that's the next thing to do? Great. I didn't get myself sober. I didn't keep myself sober. How is it that I think I have to go to Denver to visit my sister all by myself? If I go there, will you go with me? And the answer is yes. My little sister is somebody that was on my list. And my little sister is a pretty good cookie. But I never noticed that. And my brother and I gave her a tough time. And of course I was angry that she was alive at all. Some maybe 30 years ago now, she had already had 2 children, and she married a guy. And it was a black guy. So I get up on my high horse about that because my father comes from Dothan, Alabama, and I thought she had married this guy to hurt my dad. Not that I was all that interested in my dad, but it was just a way to be mad at my sister, because I was looking for any reason I could. And so I left her alone. I stayed away from there. I didn't go to Denver. I didn't meet this man. I didn't see their family. She had 2 kids, he had 3, and they had 1 between them. So now they got a family of 6 kids. And I'm staying away. I'm withholding my blessing, my approval, my friendship, my love. And now I get here. And so what's the harm done? It's kind of subtle, but it's harm. It's a withhold. It's not giving her what's available to me to give her. And one of the first things I had to do was fly to Denver. And I sat with her and with her husband. This guy was surprising to me. He was a semi-pro rugby player. He was the deputy director of manpower for the state of Colorado. He was they had a colorblind family there. They had raised one of the kids is retarded and works in a department store. One of the kids is an attorney. One of the kids is a teacher, a guy that taught English to Japanese students in Tokyo. One of the kids is a cop. These are kids that were raised in a spectacularly color-blind home, and they are contributors, every one of them. And my sister loves them and loves this guy she's with, and he loves her. He adores her, and they have a wonderful home. And I could not have been more wrong about who she is and about who he is. And as I sat with him and said, I came over here because I'm at a stage in my life where I have to account for what I've done, and I have withheld my love and affection and approval from you, and I'm so sorry, and I'm really I want to be here for you, and I would like to know what other harm. And she said, I just didn't know where you went or why. I said, I can see now the reason that you married him is because you loved him and do. She said, yeah, we have a very strong marriage, and it's withstood some terrible tests, because this man is a black man and he is a black man, but he is the most wonderful of human beings and a successful guy and a bright guy, and he's nuts about her and those kids. And and I flew out of Denver with a new hero in my life, my sister, the one that I wish would never have been born. And I saw her power, and I saw her grace, and I saw her sweetness, and I saw how she dean of one of the colleges in Denver. I didn't know that. Can you get that? I had no idea. She's just my little pain in the ass sister to me, Dismiss her, get her out of the way. It was really quite a wake-up call. But I had to sit with them in that home to get it. I couldn't have done it by a letter or by phone. I couldn't do that. Direct them in. Yeah. Be with them. Restore their dignity. Whatever little piece I'd taken by staying away from her had to be restored. Had to be restored. Whatever little piece of dignity I'd taken from him by not being respectful of him had to be restored. Because he's quite a guy. I flew to Atlanta and found my little brother. He took the hits in the family. He was born 12 years after I was. And we got up and away at age 18, and he's 6. And the family is still a rough place to be. It was just rough. Years had gone by, and we sat together as a kind of a family in Dallas around a table. And I looked over at my little brother, and he broke out in hives because being in that family setting was so dangerous to him at a subconscious level. And I got up and walked him around the block and calmed him down, but I knew what was wrong. And he had such a point to prove that he later died pushing a grocery cart. See what they've done to me? See what they've done to me? He wouldn't come off that anger, and he's not an alcoholic. But I sat with him before that, and at the time I was making amends. Invited him out to come to be with me in California. Told him and I had such a sort of a sense of survivor's guilt, you know. I had gotten away and made a life, and he didn't. He didn't get past it. And we had a talk, but his anger kept him right where he was. But I made amends to him. I asked him what I could do to set it right, and of course he had no answer. What can I do to set it right, this idea that I really wasn't there for you? And there was nothing to do. And I wished there had been something to do. And and when he died, Carl and I and Joan went back there and talked about that life and about the surviving of it. And he had been in the military long enough to be given a military funeral, and we made sure he got the honors, that the flag was given to my sister, that they played taps, that they honored him and that life. That wasn't really a very happy one. He'd never married, never had any kids, just a street guy. But we honored him, and that may have been the amends. That was one that at least calmed us down. I flew to Portland because Carl was living there, my twin brother. And he and I had some pretty good tussles. We grew up competitive with one another, and we'd stand toe-to-toe in the backyard and slug it out. And he could usually tag me. He had a little bulk on me, and he could usually nail me. And I hated him for that. Oh, God, I hated him for that. And I had harbored a resentment and done little things to hurt him along the way. And I had areas in my life where I was better than he was, and he hated that. And we needed to clean it up. And you'd think identical twins, and you'd think we'd be close, and we weren't close. We weren't close. And we had to clean it up. I went to, and I did that. And I did it in the airport in Denver, asked him to meet me there. And we sat and talked. My dad was buried in Roanoke by that time, and I went back there. I wrote a letter to my dad. I wrote a letter following this format. I pulled out those cards. Are you willing to forgive your dad? Yes. Are you willing to make amends? Yes. What was the harm? I was not a good son. I was not a good son. I refused to honor him. I refused to obey. I'll tell you the biggest harm, I think, is we all know what our parents want for us, and we won't give it to them. My dad wanted me to be a good citizen. He wanted me to be honest. He wanted me to have a family. My dad was born illegitimate in the Panama Canal region. His dad had gone down there and gotten a lady pregnant, and then told his wife, we're going to go into Panama and bring a child back here, and you're going to raise it. Well, that created a little tension around the home for them, as you might guess. And he was known as a little bastard when he was growing up, and he lived right up to that. As we do. But he wanted things for me. And the problem is that I had never really noticed. It goes like this, I think. I just hate and resent my father. Why? Well, he's a drunk. Well, he's violent. Well, he didn't come home. Well, he hit my mom. Well, he whatever. And whenever I thought about my dad, I focused on these grievances I had. And what I missed was that every day, there was food on the table. There was a roof. There was clothing. Every day he went to work. And I'd look at him. I couldn't believe he was even out of bed. The only thing that we could have been keeping him alive was the hope of dying. You know what I mean? God, he would be sick. And he went to work, and he always had a paycheck, and he always provided. And I missed that and misinterpreted that. And so when I thought of my dad, I thought of all this to keep my anger alive, to keep my sense of persecution alive, to keep my sense of not being able to live 100% life alive. And I had to put that down on paper and go and kneel at that grave. And make amends. And I didn't come out of that feeling like it was complete. But I had visited that grave, and I had knelt at that grave, and I had dug a little hole and put a letter in the ground, and I had left flowers there. And I had honored my father. And I do honor my father now, because I hold him in my heart, and I talk to him. Because he had a great wisdom. He had a quickness of wit that I just admired and loved so much. And he was honest when it would have just been so much easier for him not to be honest. And he went to work, boy, he went to work. And people loved him. People loved him. And I have come to love him and respect him. And you know why it's important that I do? Because the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and as long as I saw my dad in the worst possible light and my mother in the worst possible light, and I know I'm the product of that, I can only see myself in that same light. That's why it says, honor thy father and thy mother. That's a commandment. And it says that thy days may be long on the earth. In other words, a happy life. It doesn't say honor them if they're doing it your way. No, just honor them. And that's what the charge is. And that's what the healing comes to. I had to go to an ex-wife who was on the program and sit with her. I had married her after I was 5 years sober, and she and I married, and we were married for maybe 12 years, something like that. And I had hurt her. And I had to go and sit with her and be very specific about the harm. And she was kind to me. And when I said, what can I do to set this right? She said, you're not the same guy I married and divorced. I said, I know. She said, you were an arrogant son of a bitch. I said, I know. She said, you want to know what you can do? You can show me how you got from there to where you are. I said, I took these steps. She said, well, show me how. And I did. And I did. And we healed up. We healed up. I had to... my first wife was married to another person, and we married early. I got married to her. She was 16, and I was just 17, and we were in French Morocco, an American girl over there. And we had no business getting married. Of course, she was pregnant, and our first son was born early. It scared me so much, and I was such a incompetent as a father, and I was drinking, and I was acting badly, and she was the woman that I had slapped, and our son was the one I had slapped. And you have to be very specific about that stuff, because a mother doesn't forget that. Because that boy is of her, and it is not a casual day. Yeah. And they don't forget it. And I knew that hurt her, and I knew my drinking hurt her, and I knew that she had worked hard with me. When I was in dental school my first year, she was there and working to support us. And I thanked her by behaving like that. And you have to sit with them. And we sat in her dining room in her home up in Seattle. And I made amends. And I told her, I loved you. I loved you. I just want you to know I loved you. She said, I love you. I loved you too. And she's happily married with another man. And we didn't have anything like that as a bond. but I had to let her know that had there been a way for me to live that would include letting her know I loved her and respected her, I would have, and I just had no choice. And I didn't need to say all of that. I just needed to say I loved you. They never came. I didn't love you. And we cleaned that up. What can I do to set this right? She said, have a good life. Have a good life. I have a good life today, she said. And I want you to have a good life. I hadn't seen her in years and years and years. And my second wife was in a different category. She was still angry. She's the mother of my youngest. She's the one that moved suddenly to Portland. And I didn't see my boy for a long time. And when we got down to the part about what can I do to set this right, she said, you can start sending money again. I said, do I owe you money? She said, well, no, but you asked what you could do to set it right. And I said, how much money? I don't know, just start sending money. Well, and I knew I'm on dangerous ground now, because I got some words are coming up that I wanted to share with her. Because I never missed a child support payment, ever. And I said, you know what, I don't know how to respond to that. But there are people that I love and respect, that are my spiritual guides, and I will take it up with them. Why don't you, if you want, write me a letter and tell me how much money. Tell me what it is. And I didn't think I'd hear from her again. She had flown down from Portland, and we met in Orange County someplace. We had walked out to my car together. I was I'd driven. I had a Mercedes, and I had driven it down there. She said, "This is pretty nice." Made me wish I'd driven the Pinto in. Part of my image that was left over. I got a letter from her about 3 weeks or 4. The number is 36,000. And she explained it. I had taken wasted 3 years of her life, and that was worth $12,000 a year is what it turned out. And if I could just send her that and then continue to send some more money on a monthly basis, why, that had probably set it straight. And so when I came down off the ceiling, I thought I better call Don. And I did. He said, "Oh, she doesn't want to forgive you. That's all. She doesn't want to let you off the hook." But that's her problem. You don't owe her any money, don't send her any money. You've made your amends, you've straightened up your side of the street, and she's going to have to live with whatever she has to live, but don't stop respecting her. Don't stop being honorable with her. If you ever have any contact with her, be courteous, give her that. But don't send any of those letters you've already written to her. I said, "How'd you know about those letters?" He said, "Yeah, I know, you've already..." And you know what, as I look back on that, this is a very touchy thing, and timing is important. And you can think, I'm going to call this person today, or I'm going to start knocking these off one every week, or get a little schedule going that's totally out of my ego or out of my way I want to do it. And intuitively, it's not. If you let yourself feel it, it isn't right. And she had flown down there to see my son, and I wanted to get the amends out of the way while she was in town, so I wouldn't have to fly up there. And that was a mistake. And, oh, we're going to do this on my schedule. Oh, okay. And it isn't that. And she was not open to hear an amends, and I was squeezing her in a busy schedule, you know, which was disrespectful of the whole process and of her. And when she reacted like that, it was like later I could see that's not a surprise. And I considered whether to try to contact her again, and I'm willing to do that if the opportunity arises, but I was told to leave that one alone, because there's some that won't heal up. My kids, my oldest was up in Seattle, married, 2 kids of his own, and he's just like me. And he was not drugging anymore. In fact, he had gone to law school and married a Christian woman that had set up a home that was like the fundamentalist home, hellfire and brimstone home that I had grown up in. And she and I didn't do so good. But he has 2 great boys, and he's doing fine. And it was up to me to go up there and sit with him and with her and make amends, because I had harmed him by being absent from his childhood, and I had harmed her by not totally endorsing their marriage. And it's a good marriage. The fact that I wouldn't have married her is of little concern, or somebody in it. But we cleaned that up, and we correspond and communicate. His kids are terrific, and they were there when Linda and I got married. And I had to go to my middle son, and he's the one that had been raised by another father and never really ever considered me his father. And that was kind of a different amends, because it was like making an amends to a distant nephew or something like that, but we did that. And I sat with my youngest son, the apple of my eye, the one that's in California, and he was quite remarkable. I had a guy that the first job I had in law after I got sober was as a clerk for a guy, and I worked for him for 2 years. I was going to school at night, and then I graduated, and then I passed the bar and and I stayed working for him for 2 years, and I developed quite a resentment against him because he was not paying me what I thought he should pay me, and I was working really hard. And after you look underneath that little bit of self-pity, you notice that you know why I really left? Because he hired a guy that was about my time as an attorney, that was brighter than me. And I knew that I would no longer be the fair-haired child around there. There was my notion of it. And I couldn't stand that. And I found another job, and I left suddenly, without any explanation. And I had to go down to his office and tell him, you know, I left. He said, I couldn't believe you were leaving. I couldn't, and I never understood why. And I said, because you hired Warner, and he's smarter than me. He said, oh my God, there was so much room for both you guys here. You had a career here with me. I said, I didn't know. And I'm so sorry. He said, I missed you. I thought we had something going. I said, what can I do to make this right? And he said, be my friend. And so every month after that, we would have lunch. And the day came when the firm he had, and it was a big one, fell apart. Everybody went a different direction, and guys that were partners with him were grabbing pieces of files and stuff like that, grabbing their cases and going and grabbing the clients, and there was a big hullabaloo, and it just blew up. And he called me. One day I went down there, and he said, I'm glad you're here. I didn't know what was going on, because it was a very internal kind of a thing. You don't publicize it in a large law firm. And he told me. And he said, but I got a safety net. I'm going to go over to this firm and be their managing partner, and I'm going to take some cases and a couple of attorneys along, and I'm going to be okay. But I could see that he was shattered by the fact that this firm he had worked so hard to build up was disintegrating. And I made an appointment to see him the next month for lunch, and I said, you got to be pretty excited about going over to this other firm. He said, I'm not going. They pulled the rug out from under me, and they don't want me over there. And we talked for a while, and he was depressed and shocked, and I said, what do you want to do? He said, all I need is an office and a phone. I said, I got an office and a phone. And he wound up coming over with me. And I honored my father. You want decaf here, John? You got it. You want a bigger? Got it. You want some different? Got it. Do what you need to do here. And he got on the phone and brought in a little business. But it was a time that I could be useful to him. Useful to him. In the same way that I talked to Clancy, and we had, and I owed him an amends. And I made that. And was useful to him. The thing that I never wanted to do, I never wanted to go back to Billings. I never wanted to go to that cemetery. I stood there at 14 years of age when they buried my mom, angry. You don't love me, I don't love you. God damn it, I don't love you. I don't love you. I didn't cry. Nah. I stopped breathing deeply that day. Just it was on the surface after that. It wasn't. And 2 years went by, and now I'm in high school, and there was a football game, and after the game, a party and vodka. And I started breathing deeply again, and I had my medicine. But I left that grave in Billings, Montana, a terrible place, and remembered Billings as being an ugly, nasty little place. And I had, the year before I was making amends, they had asked me to come up there and be part of a conference that they had going. And I don't have time. No, that weekend's gone. No, I don't have that. No, I'm too busy. Because I knew if I went to Billings, I had to go to that cemetery. And they called me the next year and asked me to come. And now I'm under new management. And so I said, okay, I'll go. And Al-Anon, friend of mine, went up there with me on the same flight, and we sat together and spoke. And they met us at the airport, and they're a group like this group, a good bunch of AA. And they took us to lunch. My sponsor had told me, write a letter to your mother and take it up there and leave it there. This Al-Anon lady, this friend of mine, asked me, are you going out to the cemetery today? I said, yes. I'd already arranged for a guy to drive me out there. She said, before you leave, check, I got something for you. I thought, oh, great. She came out of the restroom in this little restaurant in Billings, Montana with a shopping bag. And I look in this shopping bag, and it's got a liter of water in it, and it's got some flower seeds in it, and it's got some shears in it, little clippers, and it's got some Kleenex, and it's got some paper towels. She said, you're going to need this stuff out there. And I thought, well, maybe I will. Maybe I thought back about those days when my mom she could beat me enough to get me to mow the lawn. Oh, I was a little snot. She couldn't beat me enough to get me to clip around the sidewalk. Couldn't do it. Would not do it. That's my little line in the sand. Won't do it. And so now I'm out there, and I go into the cemetery, and it's like going back into the witch's den, man. I know my mom is there, and I know my grandma's someplace here, and it's spring, it's May, I'm 54 years old. The last time I'd been in that cemetery was 14 years, which is 40 years ago. I've been wandering, hating my mom for 40 years, knowing I couldn't trust her. In the far country is what that is. You know that prodigal son went into the far country? I was in the far country. And we go in there, and we finally find the section, and then down there in the low rent part of that cemetery, and I finally start pecking around there, and I found a little marker, and it said Virginia Marie Eaton Hodges, and the year she was born, and a little dash, and the year she died. And the dash is a life, really. her life. And I stood there, and I was afraid. I thought maybe, I don't know what I thought. I'm going to come out of there. I had my little sack of crap, my letter, my sponsor donor. And then I walked down and found my grandma's grave. And then I walked back up and I stood at my mom's grave for a while. And then I turned to go back to the car. And the guy in the car saw me come, turned on the engine, and then I had to go back. I couldn't just leave then. He turned off. I heard him shut it down. And I kneeled down this time at my mom's grave. And I used those clippers to dig a little trench there and bury that letter. I read it out loud and I put it in the ground. And it was a loving letter and a good letter, and I liked the way I had written that letter. And then I started to talk to my mom and tell her I was there to make amends to her for all of the times that I had embarrassed her, all of the times I had been so disobedient and so angry and so absolutely unforgiving of who I thought she was. And then I got up and I went down and stood there in front of my grandma. She was such an ogre and such a brooding, dark presence in our lives and brought so much hellfire and brimstone in. And I just saluted her and said, "You were always consistent." That's the best I could do with her. And then I head out to the car, and the guy turns on the engine, and then I turn around. He turns off the engine, because I'm not done. I'm not done. And I went back there. And I was okay until I started to take that little clipper and clip around the marker. And then the tears started. She could never get me to do that. "No, sir, I won't do that." And I clipped around it. And I was weeping, man. I was just weeping. Because I knew then how wrong I had been. She's my mom. I am of her. There is a special thing going on. She tucked me in. She didn't want World War II. She didn't want all that uproar. She didn't want a drunken husband. She didn't want all of his nonsense. Did she get scared and overreact? Yeah. And she always loved me? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Could I always trust her? Yeah. And I'm clipping around there, and I start talking to her. I'm just talking to her. And I planted those flower seeds, and I watered it with that liter of water, and I knew what the Kleenex was for now. And I get up, and I start back to the car. He doesn't even turn on the engine this time. And we go back, and I go back, and I go down, and I'm not done with my grandma. And I make amends to her, because all she wanted was the best for us by her lights. This is a woman that had been locked up in a mental institution for a few weeks because she wouldn't stop preaching. In Billings, Montana, in those years, if you got too persnickety and you were a strong woman, and she was an eloquent public speaker, and she'd stand on the street corners, boy, and she could bring a crowd around. And she did. And they made everybody nervous. And they let her go sit in a loony bin for a while. Wouldn't let her take her Bible in there. Treated her disdainfully. And she's a strong lady. And I always thought she hated me. I always thought she encouraged my mother to hate me. And Just a lady doing it the way she thought she should by her own lights, and never wavering from how she saw it. And there's strength in that. Is there great wisdom? Oh, I don't know. You know, kids get caught up in it, but there's strength. And there's consistency. And there's something about that consistency that keeps the chaos at bay. And you know what to expect. And I knelt there. And I was with her. Not just standing aside saying, well, you were, but kneeling there with that grandma, Allie Eaton. That uncle that went to China to be a missionary never could let her off the hook. He died not liking her too much. And I let her off the hook that day. I didn't know that was going to be part of the mission up there. But I did leave her off the hook, let her off the hook. And I went back, and I'm done, except I got some more tears to shed. You never cry all your tears, you know. Except that day I cried all my tears at my mom's grave. And I healed it up. And she'd been dead for 40 years, and I healed it up. It was healed. I didn't do it, but I was there. And God healed that. He healed it. And I came out of that and got in that guy's car. She was ready to go. Yes. And we had quite a weekend in Billings then. That Friday night, and I talked about it, and Saturday they took me back out to the cemetery, and I showed them where it was. And they brought some flowers. And Sunday I went back to L.A. Billings looked very pretty as we flew out of there. Pretty little town, you know. I've been back there since. They called this friend of mine the next week, and she called me and she said the Al-Anons are taking on a new project in Billings that you ought to know about. I said, what? She said they love you and they're going to make sure that your mother's grave always looks great. And they do. After the snow's off the ground, I get a card and a photo, and they write like, I felt close to my mom being at your mom's grave today. And they said, I mean, that's love, you know, that's love. That's just sort of like, there's no reason for that love. That doesn't go through your mind. That is just like from your heart. That's drive-by stuff. That's irrational almost. And when I see that bunch, like in Minneapolis at the International, or I see them wherever, we're close. We're close. And my brother went up there and did his deal. I came back with a completely different idea of women. I had this negative idea of my mother, and the women that I had brought into my life kind of fit more that idea. And now I was free of that idea. And then one day, Linda came into my life, and we were just friends. But she was different than anybody I had ever been with. Because she's alive, and she wants to be here living this life 100%. And she wishes you well and sends her love to you. And she and that goofy cat will be glad to see me tonight when I get home. I didn't want a cat. Especially one that won't even look at me most of the time. They're uppity. But I knew to be respectful of that relationship because she loves that cat. Don't be doing anything with that thing. Just respect it. And one day I found out that cat's okay. That cat's all right. And then when I'd almost got hit by a car, I realized I really moved and jumped and grabbed that thing. And she brought another little cat along one day, a cat that had been hit on the freeway and had surgery, but one eye was gone and he couldn't open his mouth very much. And coal black with one eye. And you had to mix up his food real. I'll do it. Let me do it. I'll mix up his food. Here, I'm mixing up the food. What the hell am I doing? I don't even like cats. This cat'd purr and jump. And we don't have a cat anymore, but when we gave it up, we wept together. We went back a month ago to Kansas, to Wichita, and buried her dad, who was 94. And her sisters, there's just girls, flew in from different parts of the country, and we were there all together for the weekend. And we had a wonderful time. I really liked her family. We had gone back there when we decided to get married. I said, we got to go talk to your dad. And I sat in his room in this little kind of a retirement home. They had a special, and he's 90 whatever, 89 I guess at the time. And he's not always present, you know. But we sat there, and she sat by him, and I'm sitting in a chair, and I said, Mr. Staub, I wanted to meet you because I fell in love with your daughter, and I want to marry her, and I would like your blessings. I came here from Los Angeles today to ask for your blessing. He looked at me for a minute and said, how's the weather out there? I said, it's great. It's great. And I'm glad to meet you. And we later found out when he talked to somebody else that he heard me and had given me his blessing, but he didn't know what to say. So now he's dead, and we're in for the weekend, and it was a wonderful weekend. And we flew back, and that Monday morning, a month ago, I woke up and I'm afraid and I'm angry. I'm up, and of course I blame her when I wake up like that. Got to be her fault. I don't know quite how yet, but I'll figure it out. Just give me a couple of days. And I was also in the middle of a trial, and so I was not like, you know, present. All worried about this thing. It turned out just fine. Thursday morning, and she at this time was processing her own sense of loss about her dad, and which I completely ignored. Thursday morning I woke up, and I didn't have to be over there until 10, and we spent some time puttering around, and neither one of us had approached this thing about being so distant. And I got it. For me, family is dangerous. And here we are in the middle of her family, and I'm feeling drawn into it. And I'd woken up Monday morning like, God, don't go there. And when I got that, I said, I got something to tell you. And I'm so sorry for the last 3 days. I was just afraid. At some midbrain level, I was just afraid. Because I love your family so much. And I said, what do you have to say? And she looked at me and she said, I want my dad. And she started to cry. And I started to cry. And we stood there together in the study just sobbing and holding each other. And we both knew something about the other in that moment that we didn't know before. And that is, we're together. Good times or bad, we're together. I'm there for her, and she's there for me. And that's not been the case in my life. Because you can't trust women, we all know that. Except you know what? You can. They're lovely and they're powerful and they're sweet beyond belief. And they like these goofy cats, and okay, all right, okay, we'll go for the cat. Then you love the cat, and you're sorry you did, and don't anybody ever say anything outside this room that I love that cat. Elkie is the name. So it's been an interesting journey. You know, these amends are just so exquisitely precious. You can't go there alone. Don't even go there alone. Grab somebody and take them through this process after you've been through it. And they talk about heaven on earth. You know, we've experienced heaven, parts of heaven, pieces of heaven right here. And we do. Healing? Oh yeah, big time. The wounds that won't heal are healed. There's a line in the book that's just for me. We hope none of you will be as stupid and stubborn about doing this as some of us were. I waited a while. But the timing was perfect. The timing was perfect and is perfect. And I'll tell you again, I've loved being here with you this weekend, and thank you very much. Let's say the Lord's Prayer together, and then we'll shut it down.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. He comes back, his works, his word. Thanks.